Hey everybody, it's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we get together on a weekly basis and tackle the things that we thought were interesting from the world of football and soccer. I'm doing that as a synergy these days because, I keep saying or, but and is fine because it's both. We don't get involved in that war around here. Alongside me is MLS legend, Apple broadcaster, SiriusXM FC presenter, and a man who didn't have a contact stuck in his eye last week, even though he tried to pull it out for 2 days. It is Brian Dunny Dunseth. Hi, mate. You all right?
I'm good. By the way, a little shout out to all of the Week in the Tackle subscribers, listeners, everyone out there. I ended up going through a little bit of an issue last Tuesday. And after the show, I thought I had a contact in my eye, so I figured I'd update you guys really quickly. I threw it on my Instagram page. I said, my Tuesday's going great. Thanks for asking. And I effectively had a contact with a tube connected to it, which was then connected to an IV bag. And what I didn't realize in the moment was that, when you get an IV bag and they open it up and they're giving you whatever they're giving you, hopefully it's something good,
Yes.
that it comes out rather fast. And I never really knew the speed in which this was coming out. And then all of a sudden I recognized the power of the solution that is coming through that was supposed to cleanse my eye. It's coming out rather fast and coming out so fast that, it was really uncomfortable. And if you ever,
Yeah.
it felt like a car wash, but like it's not your car that's going through a car wash. It felt like you were standing at one of those like do-it-yourself car washes where the thing, like you're holding it like an Uzi machine gun, like except it's like, and
In
yeah,
your
if you ever
eye. In your eye.
in the if you ever want to torture anybody, Specta away. But I was holding a bucket. I had to close my eye like a pirate, and I was just holding it. I was dripping everywhere because the water's got to go somewhere, and it was just flushing into this bucket. And they asked me to sit there for a good 10 minutes. I made it about 6, and then I was like, "F this, I'm done." So
Did you have like headphones on, or were you like,
no,
did you have like a mindfulness
no,
sound on, like a babbling brook?
nope, nope. But
Nothing.
you can't. I did hear the solution hitting the eyeball. If that helps, I could feel it and I could hear it. It was very uncomfortable.
I was pretending to feel sick by this, but you just saying that has made me feel like legitimately sick. So
You
we
could
just have to
hear.
move on.
You could hear it
No,
hitting
no,
the eyeball.
no. Actually, nope.
Are you one of those guys? Are you one of those people that hears people
Not
puking?
not usually, but in this particular moment, yes, yes, I am. The eyes, I can't stand the eyes. Anything to do with
Oh,
eyes. I
so
can't wear contact lenses. I can't
oh,
touch my eyes. Some people like my wife will just pop them in and out. Oh, I
yeah.
just can't. The
I,
contacts are made. Not.
I gotta really quick. I gotta say that our listeners are fantastic because I just want to read you some of the comments that were put on my Instagram page after this one. Quote: I wish you'd explain further.
Mm.
I really want to know what's going on. There's a bunch of these. Andrew Williams, shocker, taking a shot to the eye. Highly inappropriate. Adam. Yeah,
Family show, guys.
yeah,
Family show.
yeah. Max Brados, why did you ram your socket? Um, the I have puns were pretty solid throughout here. But yeah, everybody out there that, you try to connect with us on social, I appreciate you. At
Yeah.
my expense, you were having a fantastic Tuesday afternoon while I was getting my eye flushed out, and now my eyes are watering once again. So yeah,
Physical
don't.
nightmare juice. Yeah, gross.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to get into a few things today. We'll do some heroes and villains later, but there are a couple of big stories that happened this weekend that I did want to talk about. And let's start in the USA because Leagues Cup, controversial tournament that is, came to its conclusion with Columbus Crew victorious against LAFC, a repeat of MLS Cup final, which you were at not too long ago, Danny, around Christmas time, whenever it was. 3-1 victory for Columbus at home against LAFC. I love the end of this game. I didn't stay up. I'll have to admit to you, it's too late for me. They are my MLS team, but it was a 2 a.m. sort of kickoff for me. It's too much. I did try, but I couldn't do it.
Good for you.
So I'd been to work. I'd done the Villa game on the Saturday, and anyway. So I did watch the game in full on the Monday morning when I get up to prep my week. The end of the game is brilliant. Very
Mm.
even, classic final. It wasn't like the MLS Cup final you were at, where I thought Crew kind of wiped the floor with LAFC
Yeah.
with great possession and almost dominance of that game. But the way it ends with the Cucho Menendez cross going in, beating Hugo Lloris, who went down in installments, takes the shirt off, throws the shirt into the crowd, sports bra only, then has to go with the crowd to get it back, which was great. And then the bit where the smoke is billowing across the field and LA are like, right, seconds left, we've got to do something. They break again and score the Russell Rother, which kind of wraps it up. A brilliant end, a deserving winner. And look, we speak a lot about the negatives there are about Leagues Cup, of which there are a few. There was the banner in the third place playoff the night before, which, makes the comparison with Open Cup and where the investment should be. And those are all very legitimate, absolutely real conversations that we have had on this podcast and our various shows. But in terms of a final, it was about as good a crescendo as you're going to get without Lionel
Yeah.
Messi being involved.
Yeah, listen, I think what we learned is the power of Lionel Messi is just that. When he shows up and he's on the field, that the eyeballs are absolutely going to be paying attention. And it was always going to be tough this second year to compare and contrast what that incredible run to the first trophy was with Lionel Messi being the Leagues Cup. And it was kind of the perfect format last year for him to introduce himself alongside Busquets and Alba and Tata Martino and what Inter Miami was going to become. So for him not to participate, obviously you're going to lose some of the eyeballs. But I'm really bullish about this conversation because I understand the history of the U.S. Open Cup. I won the U.S. Open Cup. That's the jersey. That's the medal right there off my shoulder. I won it with the Columbus Crew at the historic Crew Stadium with Lamar Hunt in the stadium. He's the man who built the first MLS soccer specific stadium in historic Crew Stadium. So I understand that. I understand the history. I understand the open play nature that everybody is involved in. Indy 11, as we're recording this on Tuesday night, is going to Sporting Kansas City and has a chance to qualify for CONCACAF Champions Cup next season, depending upon how the other game in Seattle between the Sounders and LAFC plays itself out on Wednesday night. So I don't believe it has to be one or the other. I understand the monopoly of money that's involved in this. But where I'm really bullish in this is that I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think it can absolutely be both. And I think it should be up to the clubs to determine where they want to participate and how much they want to participate. But I also believe that there should be a system in place of teams, kind of like what we've always talked about, where Premier League teams in the top six, what is their participation in Carabao Cup? What is the conversation around tournament formats and all of it? It becomes an interesting conversation. But at the end of the day, for people not to recognize the importance of what is becoming an organic rivalry between some of these teams in Liga MX and Major League Soccer. And I get, again, I know the tournament's being played in the United States, and it would probably look strategically different if the US based teams or the Canadian based teams played down in Mexico for the entirety of the tournament. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about America, you're talking about Pachuca, you're talking about Tigres, you're talking about Monterrey, you're talking about Chivas de Guadalajara, you're talking about Pumas, you're talking about Cruz Azul. These are these are massive historic clubs with 50 to 100 years worth of history that right now this synergy between Canada, the United States and Mexico leading into the World Cup is important. And we've always tried to determine how important these regional tournaments were, whether you're talking about CONCACAF Champions League, you're talking about CONCACAF Champions League Cup, you're talking about Campeones Cup. The reality is that we're seeing these massive gaps turn into very minuscule gaps. And I think the most interesting thing throughout the course of this tournament was number one, Tano Ortiz, the head coach of Monterrey, who was widely considered, if not the best manager, one of the best managers for one of the best clubs in Mexico, was fired because they lost their two games in Austin and were knocked out of the group stage. This is the team that made it to the semifinals last time around. He was fired, Tom, because this team did not perform in the first two games, and that Austin and Pumas went through instead of Monterrey. Um, if you're going to be honest and transparent, and I know a lot of people aren't interested in this conversation, I would highly suggest people go and listen to the post game quotes of the Liga MX managers who lost, because they're the ones that are speaking the truth. And what's happened in a very short amount of time is there's a weird pressure that's starting. And it started with US Mexico. And it started with the US players kind of finding success in Major League Soccer and then finding their success abroad. And there became this kind of weird battle between, the old guard and the new guard, the old money and the new money within the Mexican Football Federation that then trickled down to Liga MX and the domestic footballing conversation. And what's happening right now is all the Liga MX teams and owners, I think, are recognizing that the infrastructure and the amount of money that's being put into Major League Soccer strategically is starting this weird kind of separation gap. Because when you go down to Mexico, when you're talking about training facilities, you're talking about infrastructure, you're talking about stadium, there's a few teams that are at the very, very top. And there's a few teams that right now are really kind of they're struggling to get out of maybe that old like 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s kind of frame of thought. So now that these managers, after being knocked out of the tournament, are talking about the gap isn't there anymore. Like these are two teams that are very similar in terms of style and substance, identity, success, and failure. All of a sudden, I think without people wanting to talk about it, MLS is becoming more on a level playing field than I think people are recognizing. And it's tournaments like this that help us realize in a short amount of time how much this growth has looked like over the conversation of 30 years in Major
Yeah.
League Soccer, 96 to now. So I like the tournament. I like watching the tournament. I know it's a bit convoluted because I'm employed to cover the tournament, but I can tell you if you're being objective and not just thinking about the fans inside the stadium and just watching the quality of the product on the field, there was some really fucking awesome games that were being played. Sorry, Tim.
Um, 2 or 3 quick notes on this, and then we'll
Yep.
move on for now. I would like to ask you what you would improve. I think this is a competition that does need some development. And look, I always keep thinking of the lyrics of that song. You can't make him love you if he doesn't, right?
Hmm.
You can't make fans love this tournament if they don't.
Yeah.
And there are some that do. I think there was a great crowd for the final a couple of days ago, and a great crowd at a couple of the other games that I watched, but in others there weren't. And there were 1 or 2 kind of protests we mentioned as well. It would be a different tournament, to your point from earlier on, if some games were in Mexico and if it was played at a different point in their season and cycle and all of that. So there are
Hmm.
things we could sort of change. I mean, what would you do if they come to you now and they say, Dunny, we've got a competition, we're sticking with it, we like it, look at this
Yeah.
final, look at this interest, people are talking about it, we want to develop it. What would you
Well,
suggest?
the issue is that the windows for the seasons are completely different, right? You have a clausura and an apertura. You have two tournaments, they call them tournaments, that take place as opposed to a regular season. So from, January to what is it? May, June, you have one tournament. Then you take the summer break. You have effectively the transfer window where teams are incoming and outgoing with regards to players, managers being sacked, managers being hired. And then you start the second phase of the season. And it's never really aligned. And this has been one of the challenges for CONCACAF Champions League teams that have qualified because of their success in Major League Soccer. And then they go through preseason. All of a sudden, it's bam, you're right into the tournament of a knockout round without having really any really massive games or a run of games where you're like 4, 5, 6 games in the season, where then you can come up against a Tigres or an America or a Pumas, a Monterrey, and think that you're going to have some success. So the problem, there's a scheduling issue here because even with these teams coming back, they're 4 games into their new tournament. So you think in terms of like rhythm and fitness, they're going to be fine. Logistically, there's no way to go back and forth right in the middle of the tournament. But I do think it would be kind of fascinating if you could say an MLS team has to at least go down to play one of the Mexican teams. Like let's use Austin FC, for example. Austin FC, they had basically in Austin, Monterrey and Pumas were based there for the entirety of the group stage. So in those 2 games, can maybe Pumas play Monterrey at home in Mexico City, but then play Austin in Austin? Could then Monterrey have a home game against Austin? And then that way, everybody gets quote unquote a home game.
Yeah.
Gets that off. I think that one would be fascinating. I think at the end of the day, the biggest challenge when people, and it's a very convoluted conversation, right? Because the reality is with the success of the team and you move on, you effectively have 3 to 4 days to sell tickets for a stadium. That's not a lot of time, right? For MLS season packages, you've bought tickets, you know the dates, you're ready to go September 11th to Rio Tinto Stadium, or sorry, America First Field, and you know you're going to watch your Real Salt Lake play LAFC. Like it's a planned event. These short turnaround times in the middle of summer become difficult because people going on vacation, kids getting ready for school, people buying houses, whatever it may be. So it's not as easy as people want to make it out to be, but it's not as I just don't think the numbers inside the stadium match the interest level outside of the stadium. So, how I would make it better? Listen, I think at the end of the day, there's a difficulty in all of that, but I don't think me saying something to make it better is a solution. I think it's time. We're only in the second year. And I think now that you have more of these organic rivalries, I think if Columbus wouldn't have had the absurd amount of food poisoning they had to deal with down at Pachuca, that would have made a difference. By the way, if you're talking about CONCACAF Champions Cup final and it's a one-off playing in Pachuca, like, was that quote unquote fair for Columbus Crew to have to deal with? So there's always these weird checks and balances. At the end of the day, I think the best team won the tournament when it's all said and done. Hats off to Wilfred Nancy and everybody involved at Columbus Crew. They've got another incredible trophy to put inside their trophy cabinet. They now will represent Major League Soccer at the FIFA Club World Cup. They've already qualified for CONCACAF Champions Cup the next year. And by the way, by winning the MLS Cup trophy, they came in at the round of 32 and avoided all the riffraff of having to deal with the group stage and absolutely smashed Aston Villa in that friendly they had at lower.com field. So there's a lot of positive things. At the end of the day, I think it's a step in a really interesting direction. But again, it shows the synergy, it shows the growth, and it shows what the ideas are from the people behind the scenes of what potentially, and we talked about this during COVID, throwing stuff against the wall, see what sticks, and ultimately what kind of rises the tide that lifts all the other ships.
The only additional thing to that, and the answer is obviously logistics, but I didn't like a final being played at a home ground, like a home team. I know there's no real other way to do it, but when Giroud scores and it was sort of like one old man clapping with his dog, it was a bit like, no, let's find a way. I don't know what that way is. It's going to be money, I'm sure, paying for an entire fan base to go to X Arena or something. I don't know. More of a lead into a final. But yeah, I didn't like that.
But
If
we've
it's a
tried
final,
that.
It's got to be neutral. Well, I mean, it can't be done. Yeah, right.
But we don't have the Wembley, right? We don't have the Wembley Stadium that has the history
on it.
on
Stadiums though.
No. I'm not saying that we're short on stadium. I'm saying like we don't have like the cultural renaissance that is like a Wembley Stadium. Like if you're going to play a final or if you're going to play a semifinal or this is going to be kind of the promotion to the Premier League or this is going to be the histrionics or the FA Cup final. Like we don't have that here in the States.
Get it. Well, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, we say that, but we've been doing this for years. And I've been a part of plenty of MLS Cup finals where it's at a neutral site and you're like, maybe we should have let the highest team seeded have their home
free
stadium.
Tickets for 10,000 sets of fans each and travel and accommodation.
Sounds like a great business plan, Rennie. Let me know when you invest in it.
Hey, I'm not saying it's a great business plan. I'm just saying it'd make a great final. This is why I'm not a businessman and I'm just a
talking innocent, to me.
Just a lovely little innocent boy that wants everyone to be happy.
He's so pretty.
Lovely egalitarian
Look at Tom
world.
Rennie. He's so pretty.
Listen, a bit of housekeeping before we move on. Don't worry, we are going to take the piss about Manchester United. Should you be listening to this program as a podcast on your various podcast platforms, did you know you can watch the show in full on YouTube in its entirety? You can also watch a backlog of shows as well, going back a couple of seasons. So search for Week in the Tackle on YouTube and you can watch the shows in full. Comment underneath the videos, like and subscribe, and you'll get these full podcasts on Tuesday every single week. And if you're watching on YouTube, lovely to see you. Subscribe on Apple, subscribe on Spotify, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we always enjoy your comments and reviews as well. And speaking of reviews, always leave us a review. Give us a 5-star rating and give us a written review. Here's a couple of great reviews we got this week. Here's one from Joe Berger who says, as an American, I'm not going to do the accent. I don't know where in America. As an American who was once mostly obsessed with catch and bouncy and never watched a minute of soccer until 5 years ago, I never would have thought my favorite media person in the world would be a cynical bald man from East London who won't stop talking about West Ham. But alas, here we are. That's about me, I think. I can't be sure. And also this one from J-Man in Boston, who says, I never miss an episode of Week in the Tackle. Dunny and Rennie have a great rapport, and the show strikes an excellent balance between analysis and gently sardonic humor. Lovely word, lovely use of sardonic. I always look forward to listening, and I'm grateful to have such a fun and clever football and soccer podcast. Great work. Keep up the great work, both of you. J-Man, thank you very much indeed. They both are 5-star reviews. Please leave a 5-star review. Please leave us a nice written review as well, and we'll read them on the show. Right, let's move on to the Premier League, and let's talk a bit about Manchester United briefly. Maybe not the big story of the weekend, but I kind of want to see your sad little face.
Not today, bud.
Yeah.
Not with Ugarte coming in. You ain't seeing nothing sad about today, bud.
Sure. I mean, yeah, can't wait to see how they ruin his career. We look forward to that. It's going to be a fun topic for us.
He's so mad. Is Wan-Bissaka going to start yet?
He came on against Crystal Palace in the 2-0
victory. Is he going to start?
I think he'll probably get a start moving forward, yeah. But
okay.
He came off the bench and we won the game.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
This week I win. What do you want?
He did. He did.
But it was the same old failings, right? I mean, you saw the stat, I'm sure, on Counter Attack on Monday. 6 times now, Erik Ten Hag has been beaten as Man United manager in the last minutes of a game after 90 minutes, additional time, extra time, whatever. 2 times it happened in 30 years before he came in. I mean, look, you can prove anything with stats, right? But it does seem to be an ongoing concern that in the dying embers of a game, if you are going to be a success, if you are going to get to the 80-point line, which gets you in the top 3, the 85-point line that gets you in the title race, and the 95-point line that gets you the title, you can't keep losing games in that way, and yet they did.
There's a couple things to this. Number one, I think it's very clear and evident that Matthias de Ligt is going to be the starting center back alongside Licha Martinez, and it's only a matter of time. And listen, I think Harry Maguire is a very solid, serviceable central defender. But if you're Harry Maguire, at some point you got to put pride aside and recognize you're not the defender that you think you are for the way that this club is trending. Probably have the same conversation about Casemiro, even though Casemiro right now looks fresh and he looks sharp and he looks fit and playing at a pretty high level to start the season after what we thought was going to be his departure, after unceremoniously jumping on his private jet and taking off immediately following the FA Cup title win, trophy win, excuse me. And while everyone was partying, he had already bolted the stable because he wasn't involved in the final after playing as a center back every other game. The curious decision, and again, I'm obviously not aware of the fitness levels of a couple players, but I don't see the point of playing Mount and Bruno Fernandes in that kind of hybrid 10-9 position. Just seems a complete waste of time for back-to-back games until Xerxes come on. At the end of the day, as pragmatic as I want to be about how disappointing that's got to be for Xerxes in a situation where he's lunged for a cross and unceremoniously Garnacho tries to keep it back on frame. He's already in mid-slide and the ball hits him and goes in. That would have been different, right? The fact that they can't clear the lines, the fact that they close down space, the fact that it seems like 4 or 5 defenders are trying to take away the near post and probably shade the far post to pick out the corner. Dalot gets caught once again at the back post. Nobody's tracking a simple run from Joao Pedro. And you end up losing that game. You can't, if you're not going to win the game, you can't lose the game in a situation like that. And those are the small little details. I don't understand bringing off Bruno Fernandes or Bruno Fernandes. I don't understand if you're going to sell Scott McTominay, why use Scott McTominay? And then ultimately, listen, I think this is the joke, right? Erik Ten Hag, Erik 10 weeks down to Erik 9 weeks, that I think you so brilliantly coined a few weeks ago. So I think the pressure will continue to be on Erik Ten Hag no matter what because of the hiring of Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think that putting the 6 people in charge that are now diligently changing what's happening behind the scenes and lowering the age of the squad with Ugarte coming in. And now that's 6, 5 or 6 changes this summer, all within an 17 to 24-year-old age range, while jettisoning players that were never going to make the first team, jettisoning players that were never going to start for the first team, and still having probably 3 or 4 more players you have to get through by the end of the next summer transfer window. There's a bunch of positive things, and I just hope that Erik ten Hag doesn't look at his coaching staff being unceremoniously swiped out from underneath him during the summer as a death. I hope he looks at it as a rebirth and an opportunity to be challenged in a positive way, where he inevitably won't have people that he's comfortable with saying yes. He'll have people that he's uncomfortable with to a certain extent, challenging him on ideas. And I hope he takes those challenges in the correct way with the recognition of it will help him become a better manager in real time to have a different look and a different idea. And I think ultimately having a Ruud van Nistelrooy inside the training ground is absolutely going to help players like Haaland, with Xerxes, with Ahmad, with Garnacho, and hopefully Marcus Rashford figures out a way to regenerate what was 2 seasons ago now. Because these last 18 months, unfortunately, there's a body language that's matching the performance right now that hasn't come close to the Marcus Rashford kind of we knew 24 months ago.
Yeah, it looks a bit like he's taking that stroll down washout lane to me. We hope not, but we will see. I want to get to Chelsea briefly, mainly because this Noni Madueke story is so funny.
So good.
I wanted to do it. So Noni Madueke has, it would seem, like everyone, a public social media presence and a private social media presence. And sometimes when you post something, just before you post it, you got to check, is that from Noni Madueke public or is that from Noni Madueke just for friends and family?
That's like you. That's like Thomas Rennie private, Thomas Rennie
Yes.
soccer. Yeah.
Yes, and I also have many a burner account where I call a lot of people a tosser, and you'll never know it's me, but it's me. I've got many an account.
Sorry, Tim.
Sorry, Tim. Is that a sorry, Tim? Might be a sorry.
No. It's only
No?
sorry, Tim, because you're trolling him privately on one of these
that's
fake
it.
accounts.
Yes.
Yeah.
He would know if it was I don't know, John Benny,
Yeah.
and it was sorry,
And it's
Tim.
like, your Ravens. Sorry, Tim.
But so he basically goes on the gram and he like tags the city of Wolverhampton and basically says it's shit. Sorry, Tim. The whole area is shit. Sorry, Tim. Is basically what he says. He then jumps on immediately on the stories and he's like, "Oh, you guys are too quick for me. Sorry, that was on the wrong account." But of course, it's out there now, and he's called the entire city of Wolverhampton. Sorry, Tim. He then puts in his best ever performance for Chelsea, scoring a hat-trick in a 6-2 win. He's asked about it by every single journalist in post-match because, of course, he does all the interviews because he scored a hat-trick. He can't just hide away from it, having been booed vociferously by Molineux all game. And it's got commentators doing family shows scrambling to explain why he's being booed without saying the word, which was super, super fun. Some people obviously very comfortable with the more risque elements, others absolutely not so much. And then they're like, "Noni, what do you make to it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just want to I'm sorry, I'm just smirking. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about this." What a balls up. But also, they're buying Ivan Toney as we record this, Chelsea. There was some talk that we're looking into Jadon Sancho. Fine. But at some point in this game, they had Noni Madueke had scored a hat-trick. Cole Palmer who set them all up. João Felix scored the 6th. And they had, who's the other one? Nkunku. And there's another player in this group as well. You don't need any more forwards.
Yeah.
I know Chelsea don't need any more players, but you have the forwards. Why are you still doing this?
Yeah, I think with Nicholas Jackson, the reality with Nicholas Jackson is that he is going to create 4 to 5 really good looks per game, but he's probably going to finish one of those 4 or 5 chances. He's also going to be gifted a couple of cutback balls that are going to be really, really dangerous. But his conversion for finishing versus chances generated isn't that high, right? And Nkunku is always going to be an off the shoulder guy for me. He's not, he just doesn't, when you watch him play, he is a very, very, very good player. But is he the 9 that can deal with the size and the strength of a couple center backs and defensive midfielders back pressing? I think he wants to face the goal or he wants to run the channels. João Felix, I'm intrigued to see how this works second time around. He needs to get going because these last 3 years have been really, really challenging. He's still just 24 years of age. But between being benched and obviously his cult of personality and his type of performance just fell out with the way that Simeone wants to play his football. And by the way, Conor Gallagher, you were fucking phenomenal for Atleti in your debut. Sorry, Tim. And that took what 30 seconds for one tackle to get the love and adoration of Atletico
like
Madrid fans. Yeah, they absolutely do. And then finally, you know, I think Enzo Maresca is going to figure this out, and I know he's going to be a part of my heroes and villains, and you can decide which one you think I'm going to choose for this one. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, and this transfer window closes by this time next week, I think that's going to be the true start of the Enzo Maresca era, because all this other stuff on the outside, once you slam that door shut and you've got your group, I think that will be the first steps of figuring out how we can judge what Chelsea really is, because you're never going to judge Chelsea on that opening day performance against Man City. It's impossible. But that Wolves performance, you're getting a glimpse of what they're capable of doing. But they're also going to be a team that just can't defend. They're very, very vulnerable with the ball. In the transition moments, they make bad decisions individually and collectively, and they're at their most vulnerable. They're at their weakest point. So it's going to be a fun team to watch over the course of the season. But yeah, Madueke, why?
Yeah.
I mean, publicly or privately.
Why'd you do this?
I always look at it as like, am I going to win or am I going to lose? And I don't see a win in that situation. I mean, at the end of the day, he wins because he called the city shit. Sorry, Tim. He dropped a hattie on him, and then he got to giggle and, Cheshire Cat smile his way through a fake apology, which is nothing more than, please don't give me any more shit. Sorry, Tim. But the city. So
yeah,
he got away with it.
He got away with it, but I'm not sure he'll be on loan to Wolverhampton Wanderers anytime soon. No, to be fair, one of many, I'm sure, that will end up at Crystal Palace at some point from this Chelsea squad. I'm going with 7 of them. We'll see how it goes. Right, let's get on to our heroes and villains of the week. I have a hero for you. My hero is Tomas Soucek, one of my heroes for this week. Now, the reason I'm making Big Tom one of my heroes is that I really thought he'd be the first out the door in the Lopetegui era, because for all the positive qualities of this beanpole battering ram, he cannot pass water. He is just not a passer of the football. And there are moments now in this West Ham midfield, if you saw any of the Palace game, where it's like Rodriguez into Wan-Bissaka, into Paqueta, into Kudus, into Bowen. It's like bop, 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 bop. Really quite, okay, this might work. We'll see where this goes. And then it went to him and he was like, bleh, and just like boots it, like wherever. I was like, oh, get off me. But he wore the captain's armband at the back end of the opening day of the season against Villa and scores the opening goal in this game. And he just is the most incredibly effective player. Against Villa, he wins the penalty and should score at the end. And in this particular game, scores the first goal. And you can't really put a statistical value on a player that continues to be this effective. And it's another manager who's come in and gone, right, we need this guy. I'll change anyone. He's trying to sell James Ward-Prowse as we speak, right? He's taking out people like Naya Figuer and Kurt Zouma. He's binned off the guy who was captain at West Ham last season and just gone, find a club in Saudi, I don't need you. But Tomas Soucek, not only is he being kept around, he's being kept in the team, and he's scoring, and he's wearing the captain's armband at points. And the other element to this story is that the potato salad king, God bless him, when Jarrod Bowen scores the second, Captain Bowen builds the statue. An advertising hoarding breaks when a bunch of, I can only assume, obese supporters are trying to hug Jarrod and Tomas Soucek, and it falls on, there's a ball boy who's kind of sitting next to the advertising hoarding. It goes down. It's quite a scary moment. There's 5 or 6 fully grown men and the advertising hoarding about to fall on this kid. And Tomas Soucek isn't just so enraptured by this moment, he's not paying attention, and he uses that giant superhero frame to hold the advertising board up while the boy kind of gets out of the situation. And then when people then go back to celebrating, he's still checking to make sure he's all right, because this doesn't matter. We're going to see if this kid's okay, and then we'll go from here. And then when he's all right, and he's had a chat to him, and he makes sure situation's all right, he then goes back to playing the game, which West Ham go on to win. Plus, the helicopter Spinaroonie celebration is so crap, but also just brilliant. I love to see it. I don't know where he got it from. I don't know why he does it, but I've seen it so many times in so many vital moments. it's a celebration even the uncoordinated like me can do. So there you go. Tomas
That's not
Soucek is my
true.
hero.
Don't do that to yourself. You had a 90-mile-an-hour fastball at the Ohio State a couple of
Yes,
weeks ago.
that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. So if I was playing football and I was out of puff and I just scored a goal, that's what I would do because I'd be dizzy. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. My hero is going to be whoever wrote, I think I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired of signing these for Erling Haaland's hat trick match ball after dropping another hattie. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who signed it. I couldn't tell because all I saw on social was the picture of Erling Haaland holding another 3-goal performance ball that everybody in the locker room signed. But whoever it is that decided that they were just sick and fucking tired, sorry, Tim, of signing an Erling Haaland triple goal celebration, literally said, I'm tired of signing this, and signed their name. I thought was brilliant. I thought that the way he was holding it was perfect for the camera. And I thought it was just a genius moment of a couple of guys taking the piss out of each other and enjoying the moment. But Erling Haaland, you're the Terminator. I mean, like your ability to score goals. We always kind of projected. We were wondering when he was at at Red Bull Salzburg before he went to Borussia Dortmund, what this was going to look like based on the Champions League performances and scoring goals, what the trajectory looked like. We basically compared him to Benzema, Lewandowski, and Harry Kane, and we said, yeah, that's kind of the trio. Can you be a part of that trifecta at some point? I think now it's very clear and evident that he's surpassed what those three are currently doing, and that's obviously an age situation that's in favor of Erling Haaland, but you're just unstoppable. I mean, you can run the lines, you can hold up, you can play, you've got the depth ability of the balance and the chip and the technique and all of those things. So you, once again, are my subset of a hero, even though whoever wrote that on his game ball, you're my hero.
Probably wrote himself. So Erling Haaland, just a little numbers thing. 68 games it's taken him to score 7 Premier League hat tricks. That's an average of a hat trick every 10 games in the Premier League. For reference, Sergio Aguero has the most Premier League hat tricks. He's scored 12. On average, 23 games per hat trick, so pretty decent, but it took him 275 to do it. Alan Shearer, the Premier League's top scorer, 11 hat tricks. How many games for 11 hat tricks? Have a guess.
Let's go 40.
40 games for 11 hat tricks. Are you on crack?
No, sorry. 40 games per hat trick. Sorry, 40 games per hat trick.
Okay, the average is right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you've seen this, haven't you? You didn't
No, I just guessed.
You just guessed that.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. 40 games per hat trick. That's exactly right. But the number of games is 441. Yeah. So, like, still amazing and impressive and all that. I'm not disparaging it. We're just using it as a comparative that Erling Haaland is a mental phenomenon. If he stays for 3 more seasons, he'll have all the records.
I was going to say, what's your shout? What's your shout? Because I feel like it's inevitable that he's going to go to like a Real Madrid at some point. Barcelona can't afford him.
There's not room for him at Real Madrid, right? There's no room for him.
No,
they would need to. Some players would need to go in the next 3 years for him to, and they would have to change manager, change style, change all of it.
I don't think you do, because I think Rodrigo leaves. Because he's going to get tired of being underneath the shadow of Vinny.
Yeah, that's it. Rodrigo
Mbappe
leaves
slides
and look at it.
I mean, listen, did you see the Rodrigo WhatsApp last week?
Yes.
Oh, he's like, just want to let you know, there's more than Bellingham, Mbappe, and Vinny. You should add an R to the trifecta to make it a quad. I think there's going to come a point where Rodrigo's going to say, like, F this. Sorry, Tim. I'm better than you guys are giving me credit for. Because I think he might be. He's not underrated by any means.
He's Ringo. He's basically Ringo.
Sorry, Rodrigo.
Rodrigo. Yeah.
I was just going to make that joke, but
we're getting there. We're getting there.
Rodrigo.
Let's do villains. Hashtag Rodrigo. Would he know the Beatles? He's very young. Probably not. My villain this week is a combination of Joelinton and the referees that did the Bournemouth Newcastle game. Is he your villain?
I've got it written down, Joelinton.
Oh, good. Well, how about you do Joelinton and I'll do the referee? So give us your Joelinton, because it was appalling. This.
I don't understand. I don't understand. If we're gonna do this thing where I can go like this or I can't go like this and choke you out, like Casemiro did on Will. Oh, I can't ever remember his name at Palace.
Hughes.
Will Hughes. if you're gonna give him if you're gonna give him a nice little throat hug, a soft throat hug, maybe it wasn't that soft. But if you're gonna give someone a throat hug with your hand and you're gonna say that's hands to the face or neck and that's a red card, then there's no one in the world that will ever be able to convince me that as a goalkeeper, as running at full speed to look to play out quickly with possession in his hands, running towards the top of his penalty area, and Joelinton comes across and horse collars him, spins his body around. He goes from the right hand side to the left hand side and keeps running. That's just a yellow card. There's nothing that's different about that. And I would actually argue that's worse to try to horse collar someone at full speed when their direction's going one way, your direction's going another, and you just fish hook the guy from the side. I don't understand how that wasn't a straight red. And whoever got sent off on the Bournemouth bench, good on you, because I would have reacted the same way. Because there's nobody that fourth official, AR, center referee, and I know VAR had a complete shocker in that game to begin with, because there's nothing factual about that handball, quote unquote, handball situation. But I don't get it. I don't understand it. Nobody, like, I don't, and I know the whole Twitter thing. Like, here's our official Twitter explanation of what happened this weekend. And this is, and by the way, they threw VAR under the bus in that because they said VAR had chosen to disregard, or whatever the verbalization was. It was very clear that they didn't agree with it. But that was some bull. Sorry, Tim. I really started firing up on the curses late in this episode. You're welcome.
But Tim joined us halfway through, so it's fine. I stopped noting him down. So do what you want now.
I'm good.
Swear as many times as you like.
It's a red card. But I don't care. It's a red card.
Appalling challenge. Then he gives the thumbs up to the referee. It was like, yeah, you got it. No, it wasn't
tactical foul,
It wasn't a block.
Yeah,
that was the clothesline from hell. That was utterly unacceptable.
Look at my thumbs up.
That you would do that. Yeah, you can turn that off. That's just for the kids. That.
Oh.
Well, I was going to do that, but actually, I'll do another one because it did annoy me. It takes me back to the West Ham game. I had lots of West Ham ones this weekend, but the referee was Rob Jones. And there's a bit where it's like 2-0, game's over, and Palace have a free kick on the edge. This has to go in or the game is over. And Wharton, Eze, and another Palace player are in this kind of like, they've got something lined up here. Kamada, I think, is the other one. And Wharton's going to shovel it to Eze, who's going to put it into Kamada, who's going to run and take the shot from a different angle. Adam Wharton touches the ball. They balls it up. And Lucas Paqueta's watching this in the wall, very alert, and he's like, oh, they've touched it. Okay. Yeah. And he runs out and takes the ball.
Ball's moved.
If play was allowed to continue, he'd have been basically through on goal midway into his own half, having been so smart, he's nicked the ball off because it's moved. And Rob Jones blew his whistle because he was like, this is going to look bad, this. It's not within the spirit of the game or whatever. But Wharton touched it, they screwed it, and Paqueta should have been through on goal. And instead of that, it opened itself up to a lot of people saying, oh, got Mullen himself being booked in this game, has he? No, he didn't, all right? Allegedly. But I don't know. No, that was clever. Clever play. And he should have been allowed to get away with it. And because it looked weird, the referee soiled his pants.
And he stripped him. Did you see he stripped him of possession when Paqueta took off and he was dribbling? The referee put his foot on the ball and stripped it. Listen, we had this play. It was a similar play. Well, it's not a similar play, but it taught us to always be aware. It was with the Olympic team and Clive Charles, legend that played for West Ham, one of the first black players to play in the Premier League for West Ham. We did a corner kick routine, and it's the one where you go and you put your foot on the ball in the corner when they're not paying attention, and you just move it just very slightly out of the cylinder, but you walk away casually. You put your hand up, and you're like, oh, he's going to take it. You put your foot on the ball, walk away. And then the other player comes in and literally just starts dribbling to goal and has an opportunity to create a goal scoring opportunity from 10 yards out as opposed to the corner. We pulled it off on a few different occasions. The one time the team didn't pull it off was in Brazil against Brazil. I actually wasn't there for the game because my Thomas Rongen wouldn't let me leave. I was playing my domestic football. And it was Landon Donovan pulled it off. And the ref blew the whistle. And he got hammered in the Brazilian press. Like, these Americans don't even know the rules of the game. Don't even know that you can't dribble off a corner kick. Even though we had pulled it off like 4 or 5 different times. So I was always, as a player, acutely aware of the moment that somebody put their foot on the ball, jump it. See if you can confuse them. See if you can confuse the referee. Because what are they going to do? They're going to blow the whistle and be like, no, what are you doing? Like, step back, step back. Never going to show a yellow card. But in this occasion, Paqueta was absolutely correct in that Adam Wharton did touch the ball. And you could see the fear of God in his eyes. Like the moment Paqueta started chasing, like he's like, oh, I can't move now. Sorry, Tim. But you could see it in his body language.
Yeah. Annoying. He didn't get away with that, but there we go. Lucas Paqueta didn't get booked as well. So allegedly. We're out of time on today's program. If you've got to the 40-minute mark where we end the show, you are clearly a super listener. And if you're a super listener, what we want you to do is tell 5 friends how much you enjoyed Week in the Tackle, because you've got 40 minutes into this nonsense, which means you must love us as we love you. So tell 5 friends about this show. That is your challenge for this week. The program, if you've forgotten, is called Week in the Tackle. That's Brian Dunseth. I'm Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey turned up halfway through and produced it. Cuts out the swearing, and we'll see you next week.